Chrysler, even today, and far more so than the other major auto manufacturers, you think of innovation and you think of excitement. Walter Chrysler was a transportation visionary. His father worked for the railroads, and his first job was sweeping up for the railroad. He developed locomotives and was noted as a premier locomotive designer in the United States. At the turn of the century, he was looking beyond trains, though. He was looking at other modes of transportation and saw the growing popularity of automobiles, locomobile, at a major auto show, and decided, I have to learn more about what makes this vehicle tick. Walter Chrysler went significantly into debt by 1.5 times his annual income, got the car, disassembled it, and figured out what made cars work, and that set him on his path to success. He became a very valuable asset within General Motors. By 1912, we see that he's making well over $25,000 a year, threatens to leave General Motors. General Motors implores him to stay, and Walter agrees to stay on at the unheard of salary of $500,000 a year in World War I dollars. Works for 3 years at this rate and then announces, I have had enough and I'm going to leave General Motors. All of this led to the development of his own company and the first Chrysler automobile in 1924. And what set Chrysler automobiles apart from their competition was engineering. All of this set the stage for his first truly great series of cars, the 8-cylinder Imperials.
This car is a 1932 Chrysler Imperial. Folks are attracted to the car's lines. This car is a flagship of the Chrysler fleet. And when folks understand that it's built by Chrysler, they're really amazed. They did not know that Chrysler built a car of such stature. One feature about this car, it always looks like it's in motion. Even when that car is sitting still, it looks like it's going down the road. And the car never fails to draw a crowd when that car sits someplace. From the records, we believe that 50 of the dual windshield 5-passenger Phaetons were built. 14 of those cars were sold in 1932. And of those 14 cars, as far as we're able to tell, there are only 3 of these cars that survive. Well, this car was built, of course, in the middle of the Depression. And I understand that during that time that if you were to drive a car like this around, that you may well get a rock through your windshield or a rotten egg thrown against you. Back then, those cars were dark blues and many shades of greens and grays. And today, we might consider them to be somewhat mundane colors. But those colors reflected the times of the auto show in 1932. And it was purchased by a professor from Chicago. And he drove the car until approximately 1937, at which time he sold it to a couple fellows that were 16 years old. One of the boys had a driver's license and no money. And the other fellow had money but no driver's license. So the chap with the driver's license did the chauffeuring, and the owner sat in the back seat, and they must have made quite a spectacle cruising the hotels in Chicago and buzzing the doorman and taking off. I could get in that car and I could drive to New York tonight if I could stay awake. The car travels at highway speeds. It has excellent acceleration. It has reasonable gas mileage, and by that I mean about 8 or 9 miles to the gallon. But it's a completely dependable car, and it's a pleasure to drive. When I took my job at Chrysler, there was a sign up on the wall that showed a clenched fist and it said, "The pride is back." And I walked in that plant, and I was kind of overwhelmed by that poster on the wall. And I had my cars already when I went to work there. And that was a great feeling to go to work for Chrysler and to be involved in the cars.
The success of Chrysler's cars in the early 1930s led Walter and his design team to go to even greater extremes. In studying the automobile, they realized that aerodynamically it was a mess. In many cases, cars were slicker going backwards than they were forwards. Given a clean slate, the Chrysler engineering team came up with the most innovative production car of the period, the Airflow.
Here he comes, trying to do the very thing that every other motorist in the world is trying not to do. He swings the wheel, there it goes. Oh, a complete double somersault, and lands on its feet nimble as a cat. Uh-oh, he's stuck. Come on, boys. Nope, he pulls out under his own power. I'll say that car deserves a cheer.
It was the first automobile in major production to use the space cage type of frame construction where the body panels are welded to an outer frame. It's very much in use in today's modern cars. It was revolutionary in that period. From an engineering standpoint, it had everything possible going for it. And from a marketing standpoint, it was an absolute disaster.
With the advent of the Airflow, Chrysler broke new ground not just in the design of the car, but in the brochure, which was a bizarre and flamboyant effort with orange and magenta overlays, only one of which served any purpose to show the structure of the car.
By 1936, we see a dramatic restyling of the Airflows. They're made to look more like a conventional automobile.
Supercars, and it is longer, wider, and taller than the regular car. It was a specialty item, and the records show that 83 cars were built. This particular car was built for Major Bowles, who had the amateur hour back in the 30s and the 40s, which was the largest radio show ever. And he discovered people like Frank Sinatra, the Andrews Sisters, Sylvia Sills, and the list goes on and on. And this car was built for him to tour the country in a talent search, to go from town to town every Saturday or Sunday whenever they had the gong show, as it was known.
Chrysler Motors, Major Bowles Amateur Hour. Your vote, please. Your vote, please. Thank you very much for your interest.
When you listen to one of them now, it was terribly corny. But then I really looked forward to on Sunday afternoon to listen to the Major Bowles Amateur Hour.
And may I, for the Chrysler Corporation, for the amateurs, and for myself, wish you good evening, friends.
And the interior was all custom. The jump seats, for one thing, they just don't turn out. They roll out and they swivel, and they have a fold-up armrest, and the footrest opens up and has room for a walking stick and an umbrella. The cushions are down-filled. It has electric razor and a desk with the fountain pen and pencil and stationery. It had a bar that pulled out, and it had decanters and cocktail shaker, and it was just terribly fancy. There's a lot of gold and jade and silver and Duragold trim all through the interior of the rear compartment. After it toured the country, it went back to Chrysler, gave it to the Navy. Admiral Nimitz used it and took it to Hawaii with him. Well, he was the commander-in-chief of the Navy, of the whole Pacific fleet. How it got back to the States, I'd love to know. But it was found in Pasadena, California, behind a used car lot, just kind of abandoned. It was for sale for about 3 years, and everybody just turned and run. And I decided it was something that I should do. And so here it is.
While the Airflow may have been a dramatic-looking car by modern standards, it still didn't capture the public's imagination. Chrysler wished to regain that sense of style leadership, and they did so in an extraordinary dramatic way in 1941 with the introduction of the first Town and Country. Although Walter Chrysler died in 1940, his beloved Town and Country project lived on. As it was introduced in 1941, it became a major, immense hit.
The Chrysler Town and Country car is designed to give the all-round utility and informality of the station wagon, but it also offers colorful beauty, spacious comfort, and all the speed, ease of handling, and safety that we are accustomed to in the cars we use for our personal transportation.
My brother was in World War II and off the service, came in home in 1946. And he had saved his money during the war, as his war bride had. And he went down and bought him a brand new Town and Country convertible in 1946. And at the time, my being about 12 years old, I thought it was the absolute most beautiful car that I'd ever seen in my life. I had never, my being a kid and raised in Tennessee, I'd never seen many brand new cars to start with, you know, with the war not being any made in 4 or 5 years. So I was just completely amazed at the way the car looked. Oh, I said at the time, I said, one day I will have a Town and Country. And after many years went by, I did manage to get one. It was a car that you just could not leave outside in the weather. My brother at the time did not have a garage to keep the car in, so he wintered it outside. And after the first winter, my grandfather got his plane out. He planes the wood to get the doors to close since they swelled and all. So the second winter, he had a small accident with the car, and he junked the car. He sold it to a wrecking yard for $75. But they was generally known as the cars of the stars, and the people in Hollywood, a lot of the people in Hollywood owned the cars, and they knew better and had better ways of taking care of them than we did in Tennessee. They were hand-built. The wood bodies was built in Helena, Arkansas. They were white ash and Honduras mahogany panels. The spotlights in the 40s and early 50s, if you didn't have a spotlight in those years, you wasn't anybody. You just had to have that as an extra on your car. I like all wooden-bodied cars, really, but my favorite is the Town and Country, and I decided to, when I was able to get a hold of one of the real rare cars, I decided to start trying to get the best collection of Town and Country as they were. I have, I think it's 8 of them that is fully restored. Very nice cars.
With the success of the Town and Country, Chrysler needed an encore, and they had a sensational one with the introduction of their Hemi-engine vehicles in 1951. And to bring it all together, Chrysler revamped the entire line in 1955 and came up with what was known as the $100 million look. They introduced the first luxury hot rod, the 300 series.
This car that I'm using as a backrest is a 1960 300F and goes like hell. The black one is a 1963 300J. There was only 400 ever made. That also goes like hell. You don't drive it, you aim it. You feel that you're behind a mass of machinery that's invincible. That if one of these little cars get in your way, you have no trouble just driving up and over it or through it. I started racing in 1949. At that particular time, there were basically no rules. It was whoever got to the finish line by whatever method would be the winner. My parents didn't know I was doing that. And at one race in Ohio, I did an end-over-end flip 5 times and broke my right arm. Well, I went to the hospital and they put my arm in a cast. My parents knew that I was going to be gone until Sunday evening. Well, when Sunday evening came, it's time to go home, that cast had to come off. So I suffered for weeks. I come home and, of course, I did have some scratches on my arm. And I just gave the explanation to my folks that I tripped and fell down on some glass. And Dad never really believed me through the years. Mom took it hook, line, and sinker. There were a number of options that were available, out of the ordinary, so to speak. You had a town and country radio. When you're in town, it would pick up all the local stations very easily. You'd push a button on the radio that said distance, and you'd bring in the far-reaching stations when you were out in the country. In 1959, Chrysler come out with swivel seats. And you'd sit down on the seat and you'd pick up your feet, swing into the driver's compartment, and lock yourself in, and there you were.
The Chrysler 300 was effectively the first American muscle car, and the brochure reflects this with a spotlit racetrack setting, a checkered flag, and the proud declaration that it was America's most powerful car.
Mom had a 57 300 that Dad had bought her, and he came to me one day and said, you sell the Imperial that I had at that time, and I will give you the 300. Of course, I questioned why. He says, well, your mom's going to kill herself because she's worn out 3 sets of rear tires, complains that the car has no getaway from the red lights. I said, well, okay. Sold my Imperial within 2 weeks and called up Dad, and it overcame the 57 300, and that started it all. Well, I was taking my 1960 300 out for a ride, headed out on the road early Sunday morning. Just let the car have its head, and before I knew it, there was a bunch of police cars down the road with their red lights and blue lights flashing. It was me they were after. A policeman had put a radar gun on me and said that I was doing 135 miles an hour. Then when I went to court, the judge did not believe that old 1960 Chrysler would go that fast, and he thought there was reasonable doubt there. And I got off with $42.50 in court costs and no fines and no points on my license. The letter series ended with the production year in 1965. That was the 300L. The popularity of the car was slowly dying out. You're getting into the gas guzzler era, and people wanted a car that's more economical and softer riding.
Chrysler was not able to weather well the oil shocks and certainly the dramatic financial requirement changes of the automobile industry in the 1970s. They'd lost track of themselves and their market, and by the late 1970s were brought to the brink of insolvency. In light of this great crisis, Chrysler needed a savior. That person was Lee Iacocca. Iacocca had a pedigree from years at Ford, came out on the short end of the stick against Henry Ford II, and was ready for the challenge of Chrysler. By convincing the United States government that an investment in Chrysler was an investment in the nation's automotive future, the loan was secured.
When I see a Chrysler badge, I immediately think of 1924. I think of Walter Chrysler putting together a car that was so technically superior to anything of that time. Chrysler has always managed to mix a very pleasing blend of engineering and styling, and I think that our cars are on top of the world.
Well, I just have a tender place for these Chrysler products, I guess. You know, I just born and raised around them, and I guess I just don't know any better.